Hello, this is Hugh Fraser reporting for Uma Issa Dandigo on the British election. Well, we have a new government, a Labour government, with a huge majority. The biggest majority since Tony Blair won in 1997, when Tony Blair brought in the Labour Party after a long period of Conservative rule. So it's a very similar change of government. And so is there dancing in the streets? Is there celebration? Are people smiling? No, in fact, actually not really. I don't think anyone really cares that much, actually. There's a definite feeling of not very much happening. I remember the Tony Blair election. I remember how people came up to me in the street and said, "Hooray, there's a new government." I got to work at the supposedly impartial BBC and everyone was smiling. There was a mood of change. All the journalists were trotting out the cliché, "a breath of fresh air," as Tony and Cherie Blair smiled beamingly in the sunlight from the steps of number 10. Nothing like that's happening now. No, nothing like that. In fact, no one really is that enthusiastic about Sir Keir Starmer leading the Labour Party here, apart from a few political anoraks. Why is that? Well, when you look at the vote, the Labour Party won this election with 34% of the vote. 34%. That is something like the vote achieved by Jeremy Corbyn in 2 elections, and he was considered to be an electoral disaster. Yet somehow this is translated into a majority of around 170 seats in the House of Commons, completely transforming the House of Commons. So there will be many more Labour MPs than Conservative ones. How did this happen? Well, quite simply, the Labour Party won because the Conservative Party was split. The Conservative Party vote was siphoned off by a new party called Reform, led by Mr. Nigel Farage, who's well known for Brexit. People were fed up with the Conservatives because they felt they didn't govern as a Conservative government. They put up taxes, they had high immigration, they didn't do any Conservative sort of things under Mr. Sunak, and people were just fed up with them. And it was Mr. Farage promising change to Conservative voters. But Mr. Farage didn't do enough to win many seats in Parliament. In fact, he won 4 seats in Parliament. But he did do enough to take away votes from the Conservatives in key constituency elections, where an MP was standing and they needed more votes to beat the Labour Party. Well, the votes they needed to beat the Labour Party went to Reform. So in the end, the Conservatives came second. And that happened across the country, and the Conservatives just got decimated because the vote on the right was split. So this may lead to a realignment on the right. We may see the Reform Party, which is more traditionally Conservative in its views than the Conservative Party is, merging, and Mr. Farage kind of leading or pushing a move to the right in the whatever the Conservative Party becomes. Now I want to say a word about Palestine, because I know that's of interest to your viewers. Well, Palestine overall wasn't a big factor in the election, but in some places where we have a high concentration of Muslim voters, it was a big issue, perhaps the biggest issue. And 3 independents defeated Labour Party candidates on the pro-Palestine issue in those areas, like in the east of London and the north of England. And so, in certain areas, Palestine is a big issue. And Sir Keir Starmer has been a very pro-Israel spokesman and politician. In fact, he said he's a committed Zionist. He said if it could be done legally, he was all for cutting off water and food to Palestine. I mean, he's really been quite extreme. But there is pressure on his party to moderate that issue, and maybe he will moderate his stance on Palestine. We shall see. But he himself, he's very much pro-America, pro-Israel. Anyway, so plus ça change, nothing much changing here. No great excitement about the election result. This has been Hugh Fraser reporting for Uma Issa Dandigo.